Hello everyone and welcome to Dueling Gaming. In this post-holiday period, I found myself with a week in which I didn't have anything to do, so I decided to give myself a challenge. Can I beat 10 games in 1 week? You may be wondering why I picked that number specifically, so let me explain. My fiance and I have a fun ritual where one of us finishes an item from our hobby, in her case books. We have a punch card that we use to keep track of how many we have completed. Doing them in increments of 10, I figured it would be fun to see if I could fill an entire one within the week. So without further ado, let's get into some ground rules. This is an any percent challenge, meaning I don't have to do any more than beat the game if I do not wish to. Any game I choose must not be shovelware. I have 7 full days from the time that I start to complete it. It has to be a new game in my collection that I've never played or beaten before, and it must come from my physical collection. So with those rules in mind, I went off and started playing. Haze was a game that I was so curious about. I had heard of the reputation it had and the fact that it was from the Time Splitter people, but something about that awesome soldier mask on the cover lured me to play it. And after playing it, I was pretty satisfied with my time. It took a lot of twists and turns I wasn't expecting, and the story kept me entertained the whole time. Like most first-person shooters, the gameplay was pretty repetitive by the time I got to the end. Not to mention, the controls were slightly awkward, not following the traditional R2 and L2 shooting method most games do. I didn't like it at first, but I got pretty used to it over time, and it became nothing but a slight annoyance. This game is pretty cheap, so if you have a will, I would say to act on it. I was a drawn-to-life kid growing up, but Scribblenauts was always on my radar. I got this game alongside my Wii U back in 2013, but I never got around to actually picking it up. After having played it, it was alright. I feel like if I played it when I originally got it, I would have been a lot more into it, but now, as a somewhat adult, I just got really bored. It is fun sometimes to see what the game is capable of producing and the multitude of ways to approach a puzzle, but this effect wears off over the 5 to 6 hours this game will take you to complete. I suggest if you're interested in playing Scribblenauts, I would play either of the first 2 games or Drawn to Life. Growing up, one of my favorite games on the Wii was Epic Mickey. I replayed it a few times since it came out, and although it's aged a little less than ideally, I still think it's a fun experience overall. Its sequel, however, is a completely different story. To put it simply, especially while playing solo, this game sucked. It was a slog to get through, with spontaneous difficulty spikes making progression a super slow affair. This was exemplified even more by the potato they used to code Oswald's AI, as this man cannot understand how to do anything. I may have had a slightly better time in co-op, but I don't believe that would fully make up for the repetitive combat, shallow story, and uninteresting locations. I know I seem very passionate about this, but this was a stain on what was an otherwise pretty good run of games. I haven't played almost any of the LEGO games after 2014, with the exception of Skywalker Saga, but one of the ones that was always on my radar was LEGO The Incredibles. I picked it up at a thrift store a few months back, and I thought the challenge was a good opportunity to finally play it. After having done so, I enjoyed my time a good amount. On its base, it's very similar to almost every other LEGO game, but it adds a fair amount of new concepts that keeps it a lot more interesting. I don't have a ton to say on this one. It was simply a solid experience. This was one of those games that I bought the day it came out, said I'd get to it soon, and then put it on my shelf and never touched it. Similar to LEGO Incredibles, I thought this challenge was a good opportunity to finally beat it. I had an okay time. It's definitely a product of its time with a new coat of paint, making some of the levels a bit cumbersome and difficult, but I think all of the changes they did make were incredibly positive. I'm glad I finally got to pick this one back up. I might finally play the sequel now. Katamari, hands down, was the absolute highlight of this challenge, and honestly, I think it's become one of my new favorite games ever. I had so much fun with the pure absurdity happening every single second of every level. I had always been passively aware of Katamari as a franchise, but now I have my eyes open to the magic of it. If you haven't already played this game, you absolutely should do so now. And that's it. But wait, I hear you saying, that wasn't 10 games. Unfortunately, I did fail this challenge. It definitely could have been done, but one big thing got in my way that I will absolutely remember for the future. This was a spur-of-the-moment challenge idea. which means that almost no planning went into making this challenge work. Not to mention, the little planning I did do kept getting switched around during it. With games getting half completed and abandoned, I would love to try a new challenge like this again and plan better and make different choices. But I also didn't want to completely scrap this video and miss talking about the games I had fun playing in Epic Mickey 2. Did you enjoy the video? Let me know by subscribing. See you next time.